in action. Rules that keep things going smoothly and fairly. Rules that help us get where we're going. Help us work together, play together, and live together. Of course, in small groups, we sometimes get along without rules.
But there aren't any loud noises, just the sounds of working. We call these work sounds. Listen.
When many of us play together, rules make the game. Rules help us play fair with each other, so all can enjoy the game. Rules that apply equally to all. It's up to each one of us to know the rules and follow them.
Why do you suppose this room is so quiet? Perhaps we can learn from the teacher.
At New York's Madison Square Garden, a city college quintet races by a fast and fancy wet beat from the University of Oregon. It's the opening contest of an intersectional doubleheader, and New York draws 2 points worth of first blood.
And you know, we have found that knowing when to be quiet is a part of growing up.
16,000 fans watch the boys from the Pacific Coast as they try to stem the onslaught of city college fever. But it's all over when Silverstein shoots off the hardwood, decades the ball, and the ball game for CCNY 38-36.
Because a quiet room helps all of us learn.
How do you do it?
Well, each of us knows how to work quietly. That's very important.
But the evening sports sport is a long way from the locker room. In the second game, a team of Northwestern Wildcats is matched against St. John's University of Brooklyn. The lads from Illinois are off to a springboard start when Bob Coble eases Allen into the basket to take the lead.
Do you think you could walk this quietly? Listen to this work sound.
But tribal warfare comes to the gymnasium as the St. John's Indians retaliate with 2 points. From now on, the game is touch and go, with 10 men helping to get it there. A beautiful display of teamwork, and Northwestern gets in the number column with sharp shooting Bob Coble doing the honors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learn the Game, where you learn if you got an F for effort. And today we're going to be talking about Moses Malone and how great he was. But first, before we get into that, Politicus Rex, how are you today, sir?
I'm sick, but we don't do load management over here.
I'm tired. And, well, introducing sick and tired. But Moses Malone, do you think he is deserving of being on the Mount Rushmore of centers?
All right, I'm not real big on ranking, but I personally would put him right just because, let's see, Mount Rushmore, so we're talking top 4, right?
Yeah.
See, I would, I don't know. It depends on the day of the week as to whether I'd put him over Elijah or not. Jokic is catching. So I would say going forward, he probably won't be. No. But was for 30 years.
What are some of the great capabilities of his that made him an all-time great center?
Well, number one thing was offensive rebounding.
Yeah.
He led the NBA or ABA in offensive rebounding 9 times. What that meant was your offense could have a different focal point, and he could be as productive being the number 2 or number 3 man in your offense as your lead guy, because you didn't have to run as many specific plays for him. He would get a larger amount of his points than anyone else off of the offensive board. So it made it easier for the coaches.
Yeah. What about defensively? Was he a good defensive player?
He played position defense. He didn't get a lot of blocks. He didn't foul. People think Wilt Chamberlain has the record because he never fouled out of a game, but the actual record is held by Moses Malone. He did foul out of a couple games, but he played more consecutive games without fouling out than Wilt did because his career was longer. So people always think Wilt, they say, well, he never fouled out. Like, that's the record. He actually does not have the record. Moses Malone has the record for not fouling out. So, number one ability is availability.
What about as a scorer? I know that you're talking about him getting these offensive rebounds, putting these putback shots.
Mm-hmm.
What about if a play was run for him? What sort of offensive skills would he particularly have on display?
Well, really, he was what they used to jokingly call a black hole. Once you passed it into him, he didn't get very many assists at all.
Yeah.
Usually 1 or 2 a game. If the play went to him, then he took the shot. But it was normally he had like a 5 to 10 foot jumper. 10 is stretching it. He didn't do it very often. He could shoot from farther out, but that wasn't where he played. That wasn't offensive rebounding was his strong point. So he rarely took a mid-range jumper, even though he could hit them regularly. He didn't shoot them because it would take himself out of offensive rebounding position.
Yeah.
So most of his shots were going towards the basket.
If you could break it down, what were some of the things that made him such an effective offensive rebounder, even if he was taking the shot?
Never quit. His work ethic, he never stopped. He would always out hustle. He was consistently having big second halves because he would spend the first half basically beating up the other guy. He was a very physical player. As the other guy wore down, Moses didn't wear down. So he quite regularly had bigger second halves than first halves.
Yeah. What were some of his, who would you say were his biggest rivals over his career, and what were some of the moments that they had?
Well, the biggest was Kareem. Basically, he took over. When Kareem was the guy, he was pretty much unchallenged, other than when Malone hit his stride in Houston. And it was a long road to get to Houston. But once he got to Houston, he had 3 MVPs, and I believe it was 4 years. I think 3 MVPs in 4 years. 79, 5 years. 79, 82, and 83.
Yeah.
I think he was the MVP. Now, yes, Kareem got it in 80, but that was Kareem's last one. And then Dr. J, 81, and then Moses, 82, 83, became the dominant center in the league. Then you had the generation of centers that came in with Olajuwon and Ewing, and they came up and eventually supplanted Moses.
What about in his ABA years? who was his biggest rival? What? Talk about more about his ABA years.
Well, his ABA years was 1.5 years. That's all.
Year and a half.
Well, he was drafted out of high school, and that's actually a big. This is something that a lot of fans don't understand when they talk about greatest coaches of all time. No one mentions Lefty Driesell. The only reason Lefty Driesell is not mentioned as one of the greatest coaches of all time is because of two different separate events. Number one, Moses had signed a letter of intent to go to Maryland. Maryland already had the number one team in the country. And they signed Moses Malone, who was the National High School Player of the Year. They were going to dominate at the college level. But he jumped to the ABA instead. And then obviously the death of Bias is the huge black mark on Driesell's career. You take out Bias's death and Moses goes to college, and people are still remembering Driesell today as one of the top 5 coaches of all time.
Yeah.
But he got offered, I believe it was $100,000 contract. Now you got to understand, Moses growing up, his mother had a 5th grade education.
Mm-hmm.
Stopped school after the 5th grade. His father was abusive, and his mother threw his father out of the house when he was 2. When Moses was 2, he grew up single mother, uneducated. They didn't even have paint on their house. And here comes Utah Stars offering him $100,000 at 18 years old. And even Lefty Driesell, it was actually Lefty Driesell that told him, take the money.
Mm-hmm.
Getting your education is important, but there's no time frame on your education. You can go to college with the money, Yeah. So Lefty Driesell, thinking of Moses more than himself, said, take the money, Moses. Take that money, get into a better, house, a better community. You can always go to school in the summertime and get educated. You can do whatever you want. So he took the money with Utah, went to Utah. Now, what people don't realize is he was a power forward.
Yeah.
He was not a center at that point. He was 6'10", 215. He looked more like KD.
Yeah.
But you couldn't keep him off the boards. And then he ended up, that was his rookie year. He was on the all-rookie team. Then his second year, he got injured. And while he was injured, the team went out of business. So he ended up going to the St. Louis Spirits. Now, he comes back from injury, plays the rest of the season with the Spirits. They didn't make the playoffs. They were a lousy team when he joined. They improved, but not enough to make the playoffs. And that was last year of the ABA. Now, Moses was actually drafted by the Chicago Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
But the NBA wouldn't allow it because his college class had not graduated yet. So they said he was ineligible. But he was originally drafted by the Bulls. So then he ends up being drafted by, I believe he was actually drafted by the Jazz. Or no, he was drafted by Portland. Imagine if he had been playing for Portland.
Yeah, so that was actually because I was doing a debate recently about Bill Walton. They were talking the specifics about it. I don't remember. I think they had the capability. When they traded for Lucius Allen, or anyway, there were details behind it, but I think they had 2 number 1 picks or something like that, and then they could have got Moses Malone. I don't remember.
They had their pick, and then they had a pick from a deal that involved Gail Goodrich.
Yeah.
That complicated trade thing ended up being the Magic Johnson pick.
Yeah.
But He was drafted by Portland,
Hmm.
but Portland in this dispersal draft also took Maurice Lucas, who at the time was one of the top 3 power forwards in the world.
I meant to say Maurice Lucas. I lost the name. If you can hear me
Yeah.
stammering for it.
So Moses made it quite clear to them that he was not willing to sit the bench to be the backup to Walton and Lucas. So after 2 days, they traded him to the Buffalo Braves. Or not 2 days. He was traded to the Buffalo Braves. And then the Buffalo Braves had the same issue. He was going to be playing behind Bob McAdoo. And
Yeah.
he said, no, I'm not playing behind anybody. And refused to play again. So they ended up trading him. Or he didn't refuse to play. He complained about the playing time. So he ended up getting traded to Houston. Then obviously became dominant, which makes you look back at the management of, the other 2 teams going, huh, maybe maybe they should have believed in Moses a bit more.
I think I know you like to say it a lot. I think it's situation and circumstance, and there's always that what they and it's not that they're not experts. It's not like it's the first time they've ever dealt with, or typically that they've ever dealt with personalities or putting a team together and trying to manage a team. So it's just a whiff. I mean, even with the Draymond Green stuff, I know I like to bring that up is what if Steve Kerr never coached the Golden State Warriors? Um, Draymond Green may have been out of the league in 3 or 4 years, and they may never have won a championship if he never got to play. And it's
Undoubtedly, he
not
would have been out of the league. He did have enough skill, and there's 500 NBA players. He would have been picked up by someone else, and then you just have the same roll of the dice. Does the coach at the other team recognize his abilities?
yeah, and I mentioned that he may have been out of the league because of him being a second round draft pick. If he wasn't getting the playing time before Kerr got there, those kind of factors. That's the only reason I bring it up. It's not that I'm not saying he was unskilled. He obviously was skilled enough. And yeah, to your point, maybe there's a good possibility he would have stuck around, but anyway. What about how did he match up when he was in the ABA against guys like Artis Gilmore?
Well, he didn't play Artis
Okay,
Gilmore because he was a power forward in the
okay,
ABA. He was not a center. Like I said, he
yeah,
weighed 215 pounds when he
yeah.
was in the ABA. He was
What
really.
about Maurice Lucas?
What about Maurice Lucas?
Didn't he play Maurice Lucas in the ABA?
Well, yeah, they play. I mean, I don't know their exact stats for individual matchups, but Moses was on the all rookie team and averaged, I believe it was like 18 and 12.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
So, I mean, he handled his own. For one thing, all these teams wouldn't have been going after him if he wasn't proving on a nightly basis that he could handle his own against anyone.
yeah.
I mean, everybody wanted him. It was just what, in the time when you had to be very discretionary with your money, it was just a question of, can we keep him? Today, it wouldn't be an issue. Back then, you only got bench players didn't get paid back then. They didn't get big money. Only stars and only champions. If you were a bench player and you wanted a multi-year contract, you better win the championship. Because that was the only way a bench player is getting a decent long-term contract, is if you're a key contributor off the bench to a champion. And he was not willing to sit the bench because he knew, even being a starter on a horrible team, I'm going to make a lot more money than being a bench player on a great team. And he grew up dirt poor. It's professional basketball. It was about the money.
Yeah. What about What are some things that you think Moses Malone influenced over the history of the NBA that you still see today, or that there were big impacts um, after or during his play?
Well, the thing that Moses really did is, if you look at basketball, to me, this is one of the biggest differences. when when fans watch games from the 60s where they're going the very fast pace, the one thing you'll notice is that there weren't a lot of offensive rebounds. That's why offensive rebounds weren't even tallied as a separate statistic in the 60s. It wasn't someone chasing the ball down to continue a possession was not seen by coaches. Believed in working for the best open shot and then get back on defense.
Yeah.
Moses made a career off extending possessions. And if you look at the statistics, I remember they had a stat back in the 80s, mid to late 80s. It would be about 86, 87 is when Moses was with the Bullets. That the defense, if you get an offensive rebound, your percentage of scoring goes up, and the percentage of defensive fouls skyrockets.
Yeah.
Like it goes through the roof. If you want to get the other team's big man in foul trouble, grab offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
And they started, this was during the big man era. So someone coming in with that ability started changing games and made coaches start changing strategy.
Yeah.
So they realized, hey, we're missing opportunities here.
Yeah. That's interesting. What do you think?
Go back
What do
and
you think?
watch any 60s game. Watch any of them and look at how few offensive rebounds there are, other than the big three with Thurman, Wilt, and Russell. Look at everyone else.
Yeah.
As soon as the shot goes up, the rebound bounces off the rim. You basically had one defender trying to box out, or one offensive player, might be fighting for the rebound on the weak side, and everyone else is running to get back on defense because it was a running game. So coaches were always screaming. When you're doing 120, 125 possessions, coach is always screaming, get back on D, get back on D. Don't give up easy points.
Yeah.
And then here comes this guy that says, now y'all can go ahead and get back. I'm going to grab the ball. I'm going to outfight the defenders, and I'm going to get some easy points. And he was so fantastic about it. He's the greatest offensive rebounder of all time. It just changed how the game was played. And I believe if you look at it and if someone took the time to chart it and follow it very precisely, I think it's probably actually Moses Malone that caused the slowing down of the next generation, the next era. Because after him, then you get Rodman. You get guys like that. You get guys, AC Green and guys that are coming in, just getting, Roy Tarpley. Guys just coming in, grabbing offensive rebounds. You don't have to run any plays for them. They'll get their points off his teammates' misses, which is just a complete plus. There's no downside.
Yeah.
And what you ended up having is a slowing down of the game.
Yeah. What do you think was Moses's most impressive season? Obviously, for the people that know about it, he won the NBA championship in 1983.
Mm-hmm.
Barring that team success, not particularly for that year. What do you think was his most impressive outing during his career?
Honestly, his rookie season in the ABA.
No.
To come out of high school and we're not talking like a basketball factory type of high school. We're not talking about Power Memorial, we're not talking about, Oak Hill Academy, Dunbar. We're not talking about one. We're talking Petersburg High School. Mark West is the other NBA player that came out of Petersburg High School. But to just 6'10", 215, come out of high school, go straight into the pro ranks, and prove that you are most definitely a contributor. Like you're in the top 20 players in the league as an 18-year-old that hasn't even your body hasn't even filled out yet. That is when scouts started seriously paying attention to high school athletes, and the jump into the pros started to become a realistic possibility.
Yeah. What later on in his career, as a lot of players do, they end up in ways becoming mentors to some younger players. Uh, I think most famously, he was probably uh, a mentor of Charles Barkley. But what do you think are some of the things that he instilled in Charles Barkley? And then a follow-up question is, I know that he played for the Spurs near the end of his career. How much of an effect do you think that his presence had on players such as David Robinson for that organization?
Well, basically his up until I might be wrong. I think it was his second year in Atlanta. Moses was still a 20-10 guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he was being acquired by teams and signed. He went to Atlanta as a free agent. He got traded to the Bullets, but then he played there 2 years and then signed with Atlanta. I believe it was his second year with Atlanta was when his numbers drastically dropped. And from that point on, he was playing the role player mentor role on the team. Obviously he was a people don't realize he was a huge influence to Akeem Olajuwon, because he played in Houston. He would play in summer league in Houston. Even when he was playing for other teams during the year, he would play summer league in Houston and would play against young Akeem. And then you also had Elvin Hayes there in Houston at that time, at the end of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people don't pay enough attention to, is when you talk about, Jordan always had the most elite coaching. At every level, he had elite coaching. And that makes a difference. When Hakeem was young, he had just elite mentors to teach him the NBA life, the NBA game. He had future Hall of Famers, all-time greats like Elvin Hayes and Moses teaching him. You mentioned Barkley. It was actually Moses that got Barkley to get in shape. Coaches couldn't do it. The team management couldn't do it. It was Moses that got him in shape, told him what he needed to do. Told him, you need to lose 5 pounds. He'd lose 5 pounds. He still wasn't playing that, great. So he said, lose 5 more. And he lose 5 more. He got down, I think he said he got down to 250 or 255. He was playing great. And Moses said, okay, try and go down 5 more. He went down to 250 and he was struggling with his stamina. And Moses said, okay, you found your weight, 255. Get back up to 255. That's your playing weight. Stay at 255. And as long as Barkley stayed at 255, he was an MVP candidate.
Yeah.
Moses taught him how to get in NBA shape and how to look at the game and look at his skills and use them. And
Talking about
the one
talking.
thing to teach young players. Now, this is the difference. When Moses got in, like I said, he had no money. He went pro for the paycheck.
Yeah.
He knew coming from nothing. The next generation that he's tutoring is when all the money came in. Barkley, Olajuwon, not Duncan, Robinson, when they all came in the league, I believe in Atlanta, maybe Mutombo. I'm not sure about that. But when they came in the league, they're already millionaires. They were guaranteed contracts, guaranteed $1 million contracts. So they're already millionaires. So if you're going to get someone to mentor these young guys, you can't be preaching about this is how you play to get your money. They already got their money. It's guaranteed. You got to bring in players that did it off work ethic and teach them work ethic, and that's where Moses is, that's his claim to fame, over anyone else if you look at all the players in the Hall of Fame, he's at the top of the list for that.
Do you think that is conditioning? Now, I think this is kind of a obvious question, but I mean, with the effort compared to his conditioning, do you think that his greatest skill was his conditioning, or do you think that it was, or do you think it's really just his mindset with the effort?
Well, it's the mindset because the conditioning comes because of the mindset. If you don't have the mindset, you don't get the conditioning. Even when he was on 15 years into his NBA career, he still had the keys to the gym at Petersburg High School. And he would come, he'd come into town. He'd go to the gym. He'd lock the doors for 8 hours. Literally have a lunch pail. And would go do an 8-hour workout with a lunch period of just by himself, the only one in the gym, nonstop, just going at it, putting the ball up, grabbing it, putting it up, grabbing it, putting it up, grabbing it, just nonstop, running down the court, doing the drill at the other end, then running to the other end, nonstop. And when you look at him, he didn't have the body of like Karl Malone or David Robinson, with the big muscles and all that. He didn't care about that. He looked like your dad out on the court. But it was his lungs and his strength, his foot quickness. It's not about how you look. It's about what you do. And he just worried about results.
Yeah. On the sidebar, that number up at the top that says 2, that's actually wrong. There's 500 people actually watching this right now. No, but no, I agree, especially for me when I've been in shape in my life. I've never looked super fantastic. I never had a 6-pack abs or anything like that. And I'm very much for functional fitness. And when I did work out a lot, I did a lot of calisthenics. I didn't do a lot of weightlifting. Not that there's anything wrong with weightlifting, but I always tried to be functionally strong and have a high endurance set. But I'm also a larger guy, so I don't need to lift 400 pounds because I can already lift 260 pounds without much, without weightlifting if I do a bunch of push-ups and stuff. So why not just be able to lift 260 pounds a lot more than, but anyway, but more so with my body weight. So I totally understand that on a personal side of it. Do you think that he had effect on David Robinson though, as that follow-on question, or do you think it was David Robinson was too much into his career and Moses Malone was more at the end of it?
No, David Robinson has mentioned, having someone like Moses there, because it's not just like your day to day and your play on the court. It's leadership. David was taught how to lead in a military setting. You can't lead in the civilian world the same way they lead in the military. So bringing in someone like Moses, who has instantaneous respect and credibility, then he's able to show how to lead in a civilian. You know what I mean? It's for any of you that are former military, you know what I mean. When you get out of the military and you have to go get a civilian job, it's like, you're pulling your hair out trying to communicate with these people.
Yeah.
Things that seem so, blooming obvious, you're having to explain for 5 minutes. And so I'm guessing there might have been some of that, but he had mentioned before about having someone like Moses, mainly as a young leader, because David was the leader of the team, undoubtedly. So to then sit there and him make a decision, make a comment, say something, and you see a couple of the teammates looking at each other going, and then here's Moses that goes, yeah, David, that's right. That's what we got to do. Instantaneously, everyone in the locker room goes, okay, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
If Moses is listening.
Yeah. Moses Malone passes his playing days. Did he ever do any coaching or anything like that?
He was an assistant coach for a few years. I'm drawing out. Sorry, guys, I'm sick here. I'm trying to remember. It's with the 76ers. That's right. 2006 to 2009, he was an assistant coach for 76ers.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot, though, like with Patrick Ewing as an assistant coach, and Bird, although ultimate, really successful as a coach and front office, the times just kind of pass you by. The game changes so much that the stuff that you're preaching and the stuff that you have an insight into is no longer an integral part of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, once you go to a 3-point style offense, how much contribution is Moses Malone going to have?
Yeah.
Because you can't play like him anymore. It's literally been legislated out of the game. Plus, he was having, serious health issues. He died not long after that. I think he died at like 51. So.
Yeah. The with that said, with the with legislating rules out the game, could you see somebody moving forward in the NBA as it's going right now? Do you think that there's going to be any sort of major rules or play style changes in the upcoming future? And do you see somebody like Moses Malone, play style, somebody who plays like him coming into the league and being successful? Or do you think that is gone forever?
No, it's 2 eras away. First of all, you can't have someone making their living off offensive rebounds when everyone's shooting from 24 feet. The rebounds all bounce out to a farther distance, and no one person can chase them down. So you're not going to have anyone averaging, 7, probably even 5 offensive rebounds a game consistently and making a difference on a team, being an actual main contributor, because that takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
But on top of that, first, you need to bring the scoring back into the lane. So first, you're going to have, there's a lot of young 7-foot-plus kids coming in the league. One of them is going to get smart enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to dance around on the perimeter and chuck up threes. Everyone's drawn to the outside. I'm just going to go down low and just power step, drop step and drop the ball in the basket. And I'm going to average 75% field goal percentage, thus making it more effective than a 3. And when you start getting one guy that does that, they're going to win. Then you're going to get copycats. Once you have that shift, then you're going to have the offensive rebounders coming in, grabbing up misses, and actually being an MVP off leading the league in offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't change to that on its own.
Yeah. Do you think? I know we were talking about rules changes. I don't know if it was the last time we were talking or the time before that, but you mentioned taking a 3-second violation out of the lane. Do you think that's something that do you think that will actually happen, or is that just a suggestion you think
It's a
would make
pipe
the game
dream.
better?
It's never going to happen, but the NBA doesn't change rules very often, contrary to popular belief.
Yes.
They do not eliminate rules or come up with rules. What they'll do, just like with ball handling, is they tweak a rule. They'll change the how do you want to put it? They'll change the essence of the rule without changing the words. Like, carrying has always been carrying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rule says
Yeah.
your hand cannot go under the ball.
Yeah.
The interpretation is what has changed. It used to be your whole hand had to stay above the equator of the ball.
Yeah.
Then they loosened it up and said, well, no, the palm is what we mean. Your palm has to stay above the equator of the ball.
Yeah.
They make changes like that. The rule still says the same thing.
Yeah.
Just like with the size of the ball. Gil last year was saying, well, the NBA rule has never changed. It says the ball cannot exceed 30 inches. That is absolutely 100% true. But is the ball 30 inches? No.
It's 29.5.
It's 29.5 now. Has been for 40 years. But the NBA rule doesn't say 29.5. NBA rule says it cannot exceed 30 and cannot exceed, I believe, is 8 pounds or 9 pounds. It says but what the actual ball is, well, that's up to the guys that run the league that pay for the balls.
Yeah.
And it's 29.5 because that's a FIBA. When they wanted the sport to grow worldwide, they thought it very important that we just have the same size ball all over the world. So the FIBA size is a size 5, size 6, size 7. So the NBA ball is size 7, which is 29.5. But the rule says 30. It cannot exceed 30. So they always bend the definition of the rules. What I think they need to do, they're not going to do away with the 3-second in the lane offensive rule, but just, 1 foot has to be outside the lane. they'll make some
Yeah.
rather than you can't have any part of your body in the lane for 3 seconds well, you can't be completely in the lane for 3 seconds, which basically gives every player a half step.
Yeah.
So you can post up a bit closer to the basket and start getting higher percentage shots at the rim, which will then draw the game back into a more inside out and include 5 players in a 5-man team for once in the last 20 years.
Yeah. So you mentioned players coming in and doing a drop step for this transition of the game. This comes to mind. Who wins in a one-on-one? Shaquille O'Neal or Moses Malone?
In one-on-one, Shaquille, because one-on-one, it's all about pure. If you're playing someone with ability, now obviously if you got, some 17-year-old kid who's 7 foot playing against a D1 college guy that's 6 foot, the D1 college guy is going to win because he has all the skill. But if you're talking about NBA level players, any NBA level player, the top 500 players in the world, it's all about size in one-on-one. It's all about physical advantage. So the bigger, it's just like the story. People say, "Oh, who's going to beat Kobe Bryant in 101?" And you'll have Kobe fans and Jordan, whoever coming in saying no one's beating him, blah, 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 all that. Well, the facts are Kobe Bryant was 0-40 against John Sally.
Yeah.
Okay, he never beat John Sally a single time in one-on-one when Sally went to the Lakers as an old John Sally.
Yeah.
Because John Sally is an NBA player. He has athletic ability, foot speed, incredible length, strength, and at that point, about 12 years of NBA experience, multiple championships. So he dominated Kobe because they're in the like area of skill as far as he's competent. He's completely 1,000% competent. So he dominated the smaller man, even though the smaller man is an all-time great, because it's in one-on-one, it's all about size.
Yeah. Yeah. So
now the difference would be if there were no refs on the court and no one to break them up. I think Moses could probably whoop Shaq's butt if it came down to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Shaq only had a couple of major. I don't think he actually really had a fight in the NBA, did he? Shaq.
Well, Barkley. But that's the thing. Him and Barkley squared off, and it was kind of a, nobody won, nobody lost. But Barkley was afraid of Moses. So what does that tell you?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm. Yeah, with the Shaq thing, I don't remember him like really fighting somebody. I know he like threw a punch at him, but he missed. if I'm remembering it right, but
yeah, he missed. Yeah.
No.
But that's the thing. I mean, these guys are professional athletes. That's the one thing I never understood when they'd say, "Oh, this guy or that guy was afraid to play this player or that player." Like these guys, they were afraid to play Jordan or afraid to play Bird. Why would you be afraid? Now, I can see being afraid to play Shaq because it has nothing to do with basketball. He literally could act, could accidentally hurt you because he's so big. You catch an elbow, you can get seriously injured. But the whole afraid to play a basketball player, I never understood. Never got that logic.
Yeah. I could see somebody saying, "What afraid might be the wrong word, but I'm concerned of going up against Michael Jordan because he's going to be able to be very effective against us with, his typical game plan, that kind of stuff. But I agree with the word afraid. It's, hey, we do this professionally, we get paid. Our job is to mitigate it.
Yeah, I would
You
love
know,
to go against someone like Jordan or Matt. Now, obviously, I can't. I was a short point guard, but I would love to play against guys that were way better than me. I loved it because like I tell people all the time, the couple of times that I played with Adrian Dantley, I learned more in that like 3 hours of basketball than I learned from any coach I ever had.
yeah,
It was like, let me play against the absolute best. And you say, oh, afraid they're going to make you look stupid. They make everyone look stupid. Why is that bothering you?
yeah. Oh yeah, especially if you're not on their level, it's a win. It's a win for you
Yeah.
because you get the exposure.
Yeah. Well, you learn what it's like. Like I used to always, when I coached, I would get a cocky kid, a parent would come to me and they'd pay me to teach their, 12, 13, 14-year-old, individual basketball skills. And they'd be really cocky because they were dominant at that age. And I would always be like, okay, so what? Being the best 12-year-old in the world doesn't get you anything. You still have to finish your vegetables, do your homework. It changes nothing in your life. Being the best at 25 is what matters because then you get generational wealth. So don't focus on how good you are right now. It's irrelevant. Measure your game now against where you want to be in 2 years. If you're 12 and you're dominating in middle school, okay, well, let's go to a high school game. You watch those high school kids playing. Can you compete? Can you excel? No? Okay, what do you need to work on to excel at the next level up? And you constantly reach. It doesn't matter what you do at your level. You've already attained that. That work's already been done. That doesn't, that gets you to where you are. That doesn't get you anywhere farther or further.
The only exception to that is if you're an immigrant and you fudge your paperwork.
I have no idea what that means.
You'll have the Eastern European or an African come over and they say that you see these kids come in high school and they say they're 13 or 14, but you never heard of any of that where the people that they'll have somebody come over to college or high school and they'll say
Manute
that
Bol.
well, yeah, Manute Bol famously, but
Manute Bol's wife said that he was like nearly 40 when he was an NBA rookie.
Yeah.
When he died, they're like, "Oh my God, he died so young." They're like, no, he wasn't.
But yeah, that's the only exception for the rule. If you're 12, but you're really 32.
But that's really a baseball thing, ain't it?
Yeah, with the Cuban stuff, yeah.
But no, that's the thing. It's, you always reach for the next level. Nobody sits there and, oh, well, I was just playing with my friends in the front yard for a few years and I got drafted. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But that's probably the biggest thing that Moses Malone, the biggest moment of his career, despite his phenomenal career in the fo. And here's the thing. Moses is known, right? His big quote when they ask him about his prediction for the 83 playoffs is he goes, fo.
Very articulate.
Meaning they're going to sweep all 3 rounds and win the championship.
Yeah.
Nobody even mentions they didn't. He was wrong. But nobody cared. They actually
lost the one game.
They lost 1 game or 2 games. I think it was just 1.
It's just one, unless it's one.
I think they lost a game to Milwaukee or someone.
Yeah, I think they lost in the conference finals, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, then that would have been who? Boston?
Yeah, I'd have to check. I know they lost one. I know they swept the Lakers, if I'm not mistaken. There, let me look it up. But um, Rex, it seems everyone is very quiet today. It's not everyone is playing hooky, but nobody has said a word. Um, so I would ask you to grade uh, some of the questions that happened during the show, but
Your questions have been an A plus.
the only one that showed up.
Well,
Let's see.
we didn't advertise the show at all. I mean, it was almost a last minute decision because we're both sick.
Yeah,
So, you know,
it
in
was.
fact,
It,
I need to get going here pretty quick.
yeah, it was the Bucks um, that they lost to.
I
But
thought
yeah, no, I thought this was a great show. Regardless of the lack of viewer questions.
but really,
Um,
doesn't this really kind of just shine a light on Moses Malone's legacy? I
yeah,
mean,
I,
no one really, when people start name off your top 5 centers ever, your top 10 centers ever, Moses Malone is always underrated.
oh yeah,
So for us to have a show with nobody coming into the comments, it just kind of fits that it's a Moses show.
I remember Stephen A. Smith getting mad at the Mad Dog Russo guy on ESPN because he had a Moses over Shaq or
I did
something
too,
all time. Yeah,
by a lot.
yeah, but
People that pick Shaq because of image. People that
yeah,
pick Moses because of deeds.
yeah. I would. I do think Shaq should be considered the greater player of all time, but I do agree that um, Moses is a lot closer than people like to say, and Shaq is not anywhere close to the greatest center of all time, in my opinion. I don't think he might be at best number 4. I think,
I wouldn't put him in
but
the top 6 or 7.
no, that's what I'm saying. At best, he's number 4 because you could put
Now,
Russell,
if you want to
Chamberlain,
talk about
Kareem. Yeah,
potential,
yeah.
when Shaq was in college, I remember watching a game at LSU, and my mom called me for something. I think to get the groceries out of the car or something. I was
Mhm.
at home at that time. I was in the military, but I was like, well, hold on, wait till the commercial. I told her, I'm like, this guy for LSU, this guy is going to be the greatest ever.
Mhm.
But he favored image over content.
Yeah,
I mean, you still have so many casual fans saying that he was the most dominant center ever. It's like, really? He's like
yeah,
2 scoring titles, right?
yeah.
It was 2 MVPs. Like Moses had a scoring title. Moses had 7 rebounding titles or 6 rebounding titles, 5 in a row,
Yeah.
3 MVPs. It's like, how is Shaq the most dominant ever? He's not even in the top 5 most dominant ever.
Well,
Might be
that's
able
the
to
thing.
argue
Yeah,
7 or 8.
and that's the thing is that on the sidebar is that people try to excuse these stat titles as if they don't represent dominance. but they do. I don't
Well,
see
it's
how you
literally
could
what they
think
represent. That's why they were brought up.
exactly, and it's confusing when people say they don't matter. And if you think dominance doesn't matter, then sure, but you know, I think that's the name of the game personally. Um, but yeah. Um, all right. Well, yeah. Well, I appreciate the A plus. I I guess for extra credit. Um, what do you think? How do you just to follow up? You said 6 or 7. Who would you put ahead of Shaq?
Oh, geez.
I know you said you don't like
Russell,
to.
Russell, Wilt, Kareem, Moses, Hakeem. Those are obvious.
Mhm.
You know, then I have to start thinking after that. I mean, I don't include Jokic because he's still on the roll. He's still going.
Mhm.
But at this point, my personal opinion would be Jokic over him. I think before he's done, Wemby may end up going over him, but obviously ridiculously too early to tell. I would take, I think Bill Walton is over him despite the injuries. Freaking, if you so Bill Walton had 2.5 healthy seasons, and in those 2.5 healthy seasons, he basically had half of Shaq's career. You know, I mean,
What about Mikan?
well, I would say Mike. I would say Mikan, but so few of our listeners or watchers would even know what I was talking about if I mentioned Mikan. But I would put Mike in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean it's Willis Reed is right in there. I mean, Willis Reed wasn't league MVP, I believe, 2-time league MVP. I
I
think.
know he won the one. I know he won the one time.
Yeah, I know he
The
was at
se-
least
the
one.
70. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then he had 2 championships. You know, I mean, it was the focal point of those championships. The playing injured, all of that. But I mean, those guys you can trade in or out. You see, the problem is what screws up Shaq for me is they changed the rules and swallowed their whistles so he could physically dominate by just knocking people around, which was not legal in any era other than when Shaq played.
Yeah.
And if they would have just made him play by the same rules, his game would have developed. They
Yeah.
had to. But he was
Honest.
content to just shatter backboards, knock people around, be like the big bully on the block, but the lovable bully. And, they let it ride. They should have reffed him very tight, the same way they did young Kareem, and Kareem got better.
Yeah.
They did it to Wilt, and Wilt got better. They did it to Jordan. Jordan got better. Now because of marketing, you got so many guys that, and it was actually Jordan leaving is what put David Stern in a predicament of, okay, what do we, who's the face of the league now? Who has the charisma to take over that mantle? Okay, well, we got to
Yeah.
make sure this guy succeeds. So yeah, he plows over a defender, dunks the ball, taunts, and everything else, and no call of any kind. It's like you're not helping him or the sport.
Yeah. On a sidebar, a lot of people would say, because I've gotten flack at times for leaving LeBron out of my top 10 overall. You're leaving Shaq out of your top 10 centers of all time.
No, he's right. He's near the end of that. He's in there. But here's the thing. I don't like it. Like you said, I've said 1,000 times. It's situation and circumstance.
Yeah.
Do they let Shaq get away with murder if Jordan doesn't retire? So they're not scrambling for a face of the league if Grant Hill doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, look at their matchups. Yao Ming was better than Shaquille. Watch when they
Yeah.
matched up one-on-one. Yao Ming was better, but he couldn't stay healthy. That's part of it, you know. But I've really got to go now.
All right. Well, thank you, Rex. Thank you for the people that were watching, that were quiet, and learn the game.